listening to the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing in Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Brit and I'm here today with Samantha Boggess, life and business coach at samanthaboggess.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, Samantha.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Brit.
Well, I am too. Okay, so Samantha and I have known about each other for a little while. She's been a listener of the podcast. I believe she was, correct me if I'm wrong, were you sent over to Marketing in Yoga Pants by Megan Seeley? Is that right?
I was.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Meg. Well, I'm good friends with Meg. And so I'm pumped to have her on the podcast now that she's been a listener for a little while, to get to chat with her today, to get some insight into her business, her industry, her marketing strategy at this special stage in her business that she's in, and what makes it all tick. So Samantha, are you ready to jump in?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so first of all, lay it all out. Let us know, how do you earn your living?
Okay, well, I'm in that fun time of business where I actually earn my living doing accounting in a day job. So I'm not earning a living from my business yet. I'm actually very much in the beginning stages of my business and have not actually had any income yet. So I earn my living doing accounting, which is kind of drastically different than what the business that I'm creating is.
Okay. So this is cool, right? I can tell listeners' ears just kind of perking up because they typically hear from people that are, quote unquote, doing it, which I would say you're doing it too. You just said that not really taking in any income right now, but you have a business. So tell us, what do you do in your business?
So my business I've created, my objective is to empower women to do what excites them. And the way that I do that is by working with them one-on-one to clarify their values and create boundaries in their lives and their businesses. And through that clarity and those boundaries, they're able to have more energy, reduce their stress, be more confident in their decision-making, strengthen their relationships, and then also have that ability to finally have their own needs met without feeling guilty.
Ooh, big stuff. That's some deep stuff. I love it. Okay. So being that is what you are doing in your business, still working your full-time accounting job. She's actually on her lunch break right now, you guys. Isn't that the coolest thing? I don't know. Can I say that? Do you want people to know that? I don't know. We'll cut it out if we need to.
No, I have no problem with that. The thing is that so many women, like from my perspective, there are a lot of women out there who are trying to do that side hustle, side business. They're still working a full-time job and they don't know how to make it work. And the values and boundaries aspect of it plays into that too. Like, how do you keep your integrity with your day job while you're running your side biz and all of that kind of stuff? So yeah, I don't mind that people know because I'm going through it with them.
Absolutely. That's super cool. And I appreciate that so much. So being that you are in this unique space of side hustling, that's basically in a nutshell what it is. Tell us the story of how you came to this point in your life doing what you're doing right now.
Well, so it's a really long story, but the kind of short jump into it is I became a single mom when I was 21 years old. I had 2 kids, and I kind of looked at where I was at and said, what's the most practical thing that I can do with my life to support my kids? And that was to get a business degree, and that went into the accounting field. And I'm very good at it, and I enjoy the challenge of it, but it's not my passion. It was like this practical choice that I had to make where I was in that season that I was in. And so for the past 5 or 6 years, well, the past 10 years, kind of been going through a lot personally, but the past 5 or 6 years, I really felt that everything that I was learning and everything that I was walking through practically and helping friends walk through practically, that was my meaningful work, that was what I was called to do, was help other women kind of go through that journey themselves, because it's exceptionally challenging and you cannot do it in a vacuum. Like, we need that support in that community. And then we had, just in the past like 2 to 3 years, we had some really frightening and just powerful stuff happen in our life. My husband almost died in an auto accident, and then he almost died healing from almost dying in the auto accident. And it was like such a huge wake-up call that helped me get clarity. And so just in this past year, in December, it finally hit me, because when you're like, okay, I want to start a business, I don't know what to do. Well, here's what I'm passionate about, but what would be my target market? And you kind of have to play with it. And it's been something that I've been playing with for years. And then finally in December, I got that clarity of, like, my market is women who want to pursue their big, scary, meaningful work, but they just need help getting started. They need help clarifying their why and creating space in their lives and creating some confidence in their lives to take those steps. And so that was the moment of, oh yes, this is going to be my business. Now I just need to figure out what it's going to look like and how to move forward on it.
So if I could summarize that last part, it's almost like you are just a couple steps ahead of your ideal client, and you're throwing a lifeline back to them, or even just reaching your hand back and say, come here, honey, I got you. Is that right? Like, because it's you a couple years ago.
Right, exactly. And that's like, so many people talk about being an expert and, it's important to be an expert. And it's hard with the titles and stuff like that, because I don't see myself as an expert, because this is a lifelong learning thing. Like, boundaries are still hard for me, and I've been working really hard on boundaries for years now, but there's still those moments where you come up against a new thing and you have to establish a new boundary and verbalize it, and it's scary and it's hard and you don't know what's going to happen. So, it is very much like, my archetype is girl next door. I'm very much, how can I reach back, give you some tips, help guide you, and help you make your own choices on what needs to happen to make your ideal life.
Exactly. And you know what? A lot of times I find people try to look at their passions to figure out what they're supposed to do. And often the clear path, the path that you're really meant for, is to look at what you've struggled with, because you've struggled with it before and you've figured out ways to get through it. Not like the struggle is ever really truly over often, but because you've been there, it qualifies you uniquely to be able to reach back and help that person a few steps behind. So I'm encouraged to hear you say all of those things. And I think this is a message that some listeners who are sitting there thinking like, well, but I'm just not qualified. Like, I've got some skills, but I'm not worthy of building a business around this. And I think we are both here. Samantha and I are both here to say, yes, you are. Yes, you are. You can.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So in this stage, you are just starting out. So take me into what you've been doing over the past couple of months and up until today to get this business off the ground. Like, take me through it.
Well, I think one of the main things, okay, first, I tried to struggle on my own for the first couple of months. Like, I'm kind of that personality where I'm like, no, I can do it myself. And then it turns out I can't. So I actually hired a business coach, and that was huge for me because I realized in working with her that when I first started this and first brainstormed this, it was not what it is now. I was trying to create this safe, very practical, tangible how-to type business for women business owners. And thinking that once that became successful and could be a sustaining income, then I could do what I really wanted to do, which was more of values and boundaries are so subjective. They're not black and white. They're not clear cut. They're different for every person. Even our definition of our values is different from one person to another.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started working with her, I really started doing that transition from, okay, why am I trying to create this safe business? If I'm going to create a side business and put so much work and effort into it, why don't I just create the one that is what I really feel is what I'm meant to do? So that was the first aspect of getting from, okay, I'm going to create a business to, oh, I'm going to create this business.
Mm.
And then on a more practical level, it was learning not only that, what my purpose and goal in my business was, but how to convey that and create a business and a marketing strategy that fit with who I am and what I'm trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that did start with identifying my core values and then also identifying the purpose of everything that I do. And so when you first start, you're kind of like throwing stuff out there because everybody says that's what you're supposed to do. And so it was very powerful when I reached that point that I realized I'm not worried about the income at this point. Like, this is a business and business means you make money. That's reality. But for me right now, understanding that I'm in the very beginning of my business, I understand that given the work that I want to do with women, it's very important that they know who I am. So for instance, the purpose of any post that I put on social media, of any blog that I put out there, is to be informative and to create connection.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very freeing because I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to, it's nothing other than those two things: to give people the information that they need to create positive change in their lives and to create connections with people.
Right.
So that's where I am in the work that I'm doing now. And my content, as far as how I'm choosing to connect with people right now, is I use Facebook and Instagram, and then my blog is the main hub. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then in the future, I'm working on, and it's a bravery issue myself. Again, I still struggle with a lot of this stuff, but I'm really working on, I want to do a YouTube channel because I know video is a great way to really connect with people. So.
And it sounds like that word connect is part of your core values. Is that right? It seems
Absolutely.
like that's
it's creating community, because the kind of powerful change that we want to make in our lives doesn't really happen outside of community.
Correct. Yeah. And you know what I love so much about what you just outlined is that you are not starting with, I'm doing these things because I think that they're going to work. I've seen them work for other people. This is how I've seen it done. Or even that my business coach suggested that I do it this way. You said that you're doing these things because they're rooted in what you value. And that's such a massive shift. And you've been following for a little while. And I know that a lot of other people, if you're brand new to me, you might not know this yet, but that's what our businesses and our marketing strategies need to be rooted in. That's what they have to be tethered to. Otherwise, it's going to feel crappy. It's not going to feel good. So I love that you're leaning into that value of connection and asking yourself, okay, if I value connection, then what platforms do I need to be on, and where should my focus be when I'm creating content? That's a huge step. That's a step I feel like people don't get to until like year 3 or year 3 of trying things, and you're here right in the beginning thinking this way. I think that's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Because it is the beginning, and you never know, like, if you're on the right track or if you're going in the right direction. And sometimes you do just have to go with what is in line with your values and what feels good to you, regardless of what everybody else says you should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's strip away those shoulds. I'm not interested in those. Let's think about what's going to feel good for you, especially in the beginning. Because if it doesn't feel good for you in the beginning, you're just going to quit. I mean, how many times have we tried things? I'm sure this is not your first thing that you've thought about trying, and it just didn't work because you weren't being yourself. I think we've all got those things in our past. So awesome. Okay, so let's talk about what you're doing right now to market your business. It sounds like it's pretty content heavy. And in this stage, what are you seeing to have the biggest impact for potentially getting new clients?
I think that it is sharing authentically. It's being willing to say, here's where I struggled, here's what I'm still working on, here's what I've learned, and being willing to kind of put all of the information out there that the people would need. Like, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but even when I've done different blogs in the past, those blog posts where you were just being the most brutally honest and you're sharing something that was like, it was huge and it hurt and it was hard and this is what you learned from it and maybe you're still learning from it, you're not even all the way through it yet, those are the things that resonate the most with people.
100%.
And yeah. So I think, yeah, and so that's where we kind of have to be willing to be vulnerable in a positive way, like not like completely negative, because it's not all struggles. I think I've reached that point in my life where I realize that life is always a combination of the good and the bad. It's never all one or the other. Mm-hmm. And so it's being able to share that in a way that resonates with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's a weird twist, right? Because for so long, businesses of all sizes were traditionally showing you all the good stuff and only talking about the good stuff that's going on and the solutions that they provide and the positive parts of the personality, but it's just not that way anymore. So to show that real raw, and especially in your business, I mean, I think anytime you're going to work with somebody one-on-one, that's going to be necessary to show the real stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe not every single day, every single minute, because that can get a little like, whoo, boy, all right. What are we doing here? But exactly. But putting it in there, and so people can have the opportunity to raise their hand and say, yeah, me too. It's really powerful. Kudos for figuring that out.
Thank you. I think our society is really figuring that out now. I think businesses can't be that way because as individuals, we're so skeptical of the insta-perfect. Like, we know social media is those highlight reels of everybody's lives. And so we're skeptical of that. So as individuals who want to connect with other people, even as businesses, we have to be willing to be open about the less than perfect stuff.
Absolutely. And it's almost, do you find this too? Do you find it kind of refreshing when you see a post on Instagram that's not perfect? You're like, ooh, what's going on over there? Or,
yeah.
Or, well, for sure, Insta stories. Like Insta stories are so much more engaging and fun to watch when it's someone making fun of like their silly situation. It's like, oh yeah, that happened to me last week too. Like I totally get it. And you feel bonded to that person rather than, seeing all the good stuff. And of course you're going to sprinkle in the good stuff, but I don't know. I find it super refreshing personally.
Well, exactly, because we can't relate to perfect because none of us is perfect.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what you're working on right now. Where's your focus at? And what do you feel is really coming down the pike for you, maybe over the course of the summer?
So I have kind of two programs in mind as far as what I offer to people. And so the first one is a 90-minute clarity call where we discuss really dig deep on their values and not only clarifying their definition, but clarifying the actions that either support those values or detract from those values. So for instance, one of my core values, as we've discussed, is community, which is quality relationships as part of that. So for me, as far as when I really wanted to dig down and say, okay, what does this mean to me? Part of the way that I could make it clear to myself is to say, okay, what actions support this value? What do I do on a daily basis or a weekly basis that supports this? So it would be reaching out to friends, conversations with my spouse, the conversations that I have with my coworkers, those kind of intentional physical actions that are the living out of that value. And the things that detract from it are things like gossip and shutting down instead of having the hard conversations. So when we clarify those issues, then it not only helps us to live out our values better, not perfectly, but better, but it also helps us identify situations and relationships that are either very good for us or maybe negative and need to be worked on. So that's my first thing, is kind of working on those things, the values, and then the actions that are associated with those values. And as part of that, I'm actually planning on creating a free webinar where I kind of walk through that process, because for me, I believe that if people have the information that they need to kind of go through that process on their own, the reason that they come to me is to get that one-on-one support and kind of some clarity and the questions that help them steer in the right direction, or the support that they need to make some changes in their lives. But they're not necessarily coming to me just for that information, because it's out there if they look for it, right? So I'm creating a free webinar to kind of go through that process for people.
I love
that's
it.
part of it. Yeah. And then the other program that I offer is a 12-week one-on-one coaching program that goes through not only the values aspect of it, but creating the boundaries, and then actually working to walk through the first steps of kind of putting those boundaries into place. And so that's kind of a more, I would say, holistic, wholehearted program that addresses life and business. And obviously in a 12-week program, it's very fluid for whatever the client feels that is their most pressing areas that they need to work on. But there's a lot in that program of actually being that support as they take those first steps, because if you're not used to having those boundaries in place, either in your personal life or your business life, it can be very challenging. Like, I remember when my son, he was 10, 11 years old, and I sat down, I talked with both of them. I have 2 older boys. And I said, okay, from now on, your schoolwork in your backpack, that's your responsibility. And so it's your responsibility to make sure that you take that to school with you in the morning. So that was a boundary that I set up in my personal life, because I was a working mom and I was a single mom. So that first time I got a phone call from one of my boys saying, Mom, I forgot my backpack. If I don't have it, I'm going to get lunch detention. And I had to say, oh gosh, that's really rough. But we did discuss this, and that's your responsibility. So it sounds like you're going to have lunch detention today. Well, then when I got off the phone with him, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to have a heart attack, because it's so hard. I'm like, I'm a bad mom. I didn't take him his backpack. He's going to have lunch detention. Oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. And it's not. So, you need that person who's standing behind you saying, no, I know it feels really hard right now. I know you have a lot of anxiety, but that was the right step for you. That was the boundary that you put into place. It's okay. Let's keep moving forward, And of course, that's a very,
yeah.
that's a very mild example, but that was my real life.
Well, yeah. And I can just sense it, whether the listener is a mom or not, it does not matter. With that example, all of us just had a thought of like, yeah, you know what, I could really use putting a boundary up here in my life. So I'm not constantly responsible for someone else's thing that they should be responsible for, right? We're women. It's our tendency, and that's all well and good until it creeps in and wreaks havoc on your life, right? And I love that example. Exactly. That was so good. Yeah. Yeah, so cool. I love, what I'm picking up on, Samantha, is that as you began explaining your story, how you got here and what you do, you said the word practical several times. And that's not something that some of us have. And I think what's really brilliant about what you're setting up for yourself is that you are you are trying to attract someone that feels maybe like an untethered balloon, or kind of lost in the waves of life a little bit, and lost in the waves in different tides of different people in their life, and you're offering to be their anchor, or showing them how to be their own anchor, if you will. And it makes sense because if I'm just connecting the dots here, if you are good at accounting, you have a specific unique ability to take the big picture, the muddy details that a lot of us have trouble figuring out, and breaking it down into practical, actionable steps. And I hear that in all of what you're doing. And so I just want to encourage you, because these pieces, in my perspective, make a lot of sense. Just not just because it's a good business idea, but because it's a good business idea for you individually.
Thank you. I think that the idea of values and boundaries is kind of like I said, it's a subjective, out there idea. And so I think that makes it hard for us to kind of
Mm-hmm.
wrap our minds around it and make it real to our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I really want to help women do, because once we can kind of get a handle on it and it becomes a more tangible, practical, because I'm very practical, concept, it makes it easier to live that out. And when we're able to live in alignment, either through our lives or our businesses, with our values and have those boundaries, it's so empowering. It's so
Mm-hmm.
freeing. And I mean, there's so much stress that we feel as women, stress and guilt that we feel as women when we feel like we're failing somebody else, and we never take the time to consider, was it really my responsibility to take care of that? Am I the one that's actually failing here?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
That's big stuff. That's really good. Thank you for that. And it's not, I love, as you said that, something popped up right away in my mind where I'm like, that I felt guilt over yesterday within the last 24 hours. And it helped me realize, wait a second, that was never mine to hold. Like, that was never my thing. And it's not anybody's fault that I felt guilt about that. I unintentionally, unaware, uh, just took it on myself, and I didn't need to. And so that's really permission giving. And it feels really light to hear those words. So thank you for bringing that. Now I want to shift this to, I'm interested to know what inspires you in your work, especially right now as you're maybe living a couple different in a couple different buckets, right? Like, you got your full-time job and you've got this thing on the side that you really, really believe in. What inspires you to work on these things?
it's a combination of things. I think that the number one thing that we need to, again, it goes back to boundaries, but the number one thing that we need to make sure of as women, and what really inspires me, is being involved in communities that feed me and leave me feeling positive and empowered and uplifted. And with so much like Facebook groups and all of that kind of stuff, like, we have the ability to become involved in a lot of different communities in the online world. We need to be very selective. I've been part of your group since December, and at the same time that I joined your group, I joined another group that was a similar concept on the surface. I had to leave that group within like 2 weeks because I found myself doubting myself and feeling like, oh, I'm such an imposter. I'm not worthy of doing this. Like, I have nothing good to offer. And then it's like, wait, why am I in this group? So so one of the things that really inspires me is being involved in groups of women who are doing awesome things, and they're doing it in a positive way that brings other women along, that allows them also to feel empowered and inspired. I personally am inspired a lot by the work of Brene Brown.
Mm-hmm.
It's been huge in my life. Her books, I've learned so much and I've grown so much from implementing those things, and it's not easy. There have been some consequences to that in the long run it's good, but they're really hard to live through,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in the now. So I love her work, but mostly it's just when I do get that feedback from people saying, oh, I hadn't looked at it that way, you know, no, that wasn't my responsibility, or no, I don't have to feel guilty over that.
Mm-hmm. That's like fuel to your fire. I love it. Okay. That's a cool look in. And you're right. I'm mumbling or let's see, what am I trying to say? It's a cool look at setting boundaries online. I've certainly said it before. I've heard it before. And yet you can't hear this too many times. You don't have to be in Facebook groups that you are currently in. You can leave. Like, you can just straight up leave. Like, if the posts that you're seeing on Facebook are not giving you light energy, guess what? You can leave those groups and you can turn off those people. You can say unfollow, right? And same thing with Instagram. So thanks for, again, big permission slip. You can just like check out, draw that boundary and check out of there, and your life will be richer. Yeah. You feel that? You feel that like your life is richer in that moment, even though it's hard sometimes.
It is, but it is perfectly okay to give yourself permission to say, oh, these are not my people. It doesn't make them wrong and it doesn't make them bad. They're just not your people, and that's okay.
Right. Yep, exactly. Okay. So, all right, one last question. And this is going to be a funny one because we're all that girl on our couch, hunched over our MacBook. I don't care how long you've been in business. You're still that girl. But one last question. I want you to look back and tell me, what advice would you give to yourself before you decided to really start this side hustle and get serious about it? Before you made the decision to like, no, I'm doing this now. What would you say to that girl?
Well, there's actually two things. So the first thing would be definitely have a long-term mindset, because this is not anything that's going to happen overnight. There really is no such thing as overnight success. If something happened overnight, you didn't see the 2 years that came before it. So definitely go into it with a very long-term mindset. Otherwise, you're going to become very discouraged. And the other thing is to be okay with the massive pivots that happen, because it's so easy in business to look at, I could just use an example, because you have talked on your podcast about how you had planned to do a group program and then you realized that wasn't really you. And so you had to pivot to something else. And you could look at that and say, oh my gosh, all of that time I wasted creating that program. But instead, the other way to look at it is, oh, I learned so much. Like, I learned so much from that. There was value in that, even though that wasn't the direction that I was supposed to go.
Yes. That's a good one. Such good advice.
And sometimes being able to say with 100% certainty, oh, I know that that's not my path because I tried it and it didn't work, frees up so much mental space and creativity, because it's not in the back of your mind like, oh, I should try that. Oh, I should try that. Oh, I should try that. Like, you can write it off. Oh, that's not me right now.
Yep.
So you don't have to waste your mental energy on it.
Yeah. And I like the openness to that, openness of that whole idea, being open enough to let something go, even if you have put time and effort into it, and also openness to go back to something if you feel called to, even if you had once let it go. And so it's this blend of boundaries and openness that you are so bringing to the table. And it just feels so good to me. I love that you found this balance. So I can't wait for the listeners to go check out what you've got going on. So before we go, could you please tell them where they can find you online?
Yes. So my website is samanthaboggess.com, and my Facebook is Facebook.com/Samantha Boggess Coaching. And my Instagram is Samantha_Boggess.
Perfect. We'll link all to that. Awesome. And okay, you heard her, girls. Go check her out, send her some love, and then hop into our private Facebook group to hear even more from Samantha over the next few days. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Keep the conversation going by visiting marketinganyogapants.com/Facebook, where you'll get to join that private Facebook group I've been talking so much about. There, you'll get to chat with our podcast guests. Yeah, they're in there too, and all of the other brilliant creative business owners. We're connecting, we're meeting our soul sisters, and we're building our businesses, all while in yoga pants. So come hang out with us. Again, visit marketinganyogapants.com/Facebook to get in. And one more thing. If you dig this podcast, would you be awesome and share it with someone? This entire Marketing in Yoga Pants movement is nothing without its community. So please share. And if you're really feeling the love right now, jump into iTunes. You're probably already there if you're listening to this right now. And leave us a rating and review. The more of those we rack up, the more the podcast will be found by ladies like you, and the stronger this community becomes. This episode was edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, so go find them at podcastengineers.com. This episode was also brought to you by my online marketing agency, Jam Marketing Group, and you can find us at jammarketinggroup.co. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Love ya. Bye.